Sophia Carter sat by the side of the hospital crib, gently running her fingers over her 6-month-old son, Oliver. The sterile room was eerily quiet, with only the steady hum of medical equipment breaking the silence. The soft glow of the monitors cast faint shadows on the walls, but all Sophia could focus on was her baby, the tiny life she had fought so desperately to protect. Oliver had been born with a rare neurological disorder, a cruel twist of fate that had left him completely paralyzed from the neck down. The doctors had spoken gently but firmly, their words piercing through her like daggers. He might never move, never crawl, never walk. The weight of their prognosis crushed her spirit, but she refused to give up. Tears welled in her eyes as she watched Oliver sleep, his tiny chest rising and falling with every breath. She had fought for him, battled against every odd, consulted experts, pursued treatments, yet nothing changed. Every mother dreams of watching their child take their first steps, of cheering them on as they toddle forward with wobbly determination. But for Sophia, even the slightest flicker of movement, a single twitch of his fingers, would be a miracle. Her husband, Mark, worked long and grueling hours just to keep up with the endless medical bills. He barely had time to rest, let alone be home with them. Most nights, Sophia was alone, left to shoulder the weight of her fears and helplessness. She clung to hope, but some nights, when the silence grew too heavy and the walls seemed to close in, despair felt unbearable. Chapter 2, A Special Friend. And then came Max. Mark had brought home the golden retriever puppy one evening. A spontaneous decision, a desperate attempt to bring some light into Sophia's weary world. She had stared at the tiny ball of fur with uncertainty, her heart conflicted. A puppy? Now? She already had so much on her plate. How could she possibly care for a dog when every waking moment was devoted to Oliver? But Max was different. He didn't beg for attention or demand playtime. Instead, he seemed to understand. He sensed her exhaustion, her pain. He didn't whine or misbehave. He simply stayed. From the moment he arrived, Max gravitated toward Oliver's crib. He would sit there for hours, watching over the baby, his golden eyes filled with quiet companionship. Every night, as Sophia tucked Oliver in and wiped away the day's exhaustion, Max would curl up beside the crib, his warm little body pressed close to Oliver's, as if trying to lend him his own strength. The baby, though unable to reach out, seemed to find comfort in Max's presence. And slowly, the unbearable nights became just a little more bearable. Chapter 3, The Night of the Miracle. One stormy evening, the wind howled through the trees outside, rattling the windows with an eerie force. Thunder cracked across the sky like a whip, shaking the house to its foundation. The lights flickered once, twice, before plunging the room into darkness. Sophia shot up in bed, her heart pounding wildly in her chest. Instinct took over, and she raced to Oliver's crib, panic gripping her like a vice. Was he okay? Had something happened? She fumbled for her phone, her fingers trembling, but before she could turn on the flashlight, she saw it. Max! The puppy was standing on his hind legs, his front paws resting ever so gently on Oliver's tiny chest. His head was tilted slightly, as if listening, as if waiting. And then Sophia's breath hitched. Oliver stirred. His face remained peaceful, his lips parting slightly as if lost in a dream. Then it happened. Oliver's fingers twitched. Sophia's heart nearly stopped. Had she imagined it? Was it just a trick of the dim light? She blinked rapidly, her pulse hammering in her ears. But before she could question it further, Max let out a soft whine and nudged Oliver's cheek with his nose. And then the tiniest smile appeared on Oliver's lips. Sophia clapped a hand over her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. This couldn't be real. For months, her baby hadn't moved a single muscle. And yet, here, in the middle of a thunderstorm, something unbelievable had just happened. Chapter 4, The Awakening. At the crack of dawn, Sophia didn't waste a second. She wrapped Oliver in a blanket, called for Max, and rushed straight to the hospital. She burst through the doors, her voice a mix of urgency and exhilaration as she recounted the night's events. The doctors, ever logical and cautious, listened but remained skeptical. A reflex, they told her, a coincidence. But then Max, ever the loyal companion, trotted up to Oliver's hospital bed and licked his tiny fingers. And Oliver's hand twitched. Again, a hush fell over the room as the medical team watched, their expressions shifting from doubt to awe. This wasn't just a one-time occurrence. There was something real happening. One by one, they gathered around, running tests, checking nerve responses, looking for explanations. Hours passed, and then finally, one doctor turned to Sophia, his voice thick with disbelief. "His muscles are responding," he said. "It's faint, but it's there. This isn't supposed to happen." Sophia broke down in tears, clutching Max to her chest. It was him. She realized. Max had woken something inside Oliver. Chapter 5. A Dog's Love. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. Little by little, Oliver's movements became stronger. At first, it was just a twitch here, a flicker there. But every time Max interacted with him, every time he licked his hand, nudged his cheek, or curled up beside him, Oliver seemed to fight a little harder. The doctors couldn't explain it. The science didn't make sense. And yet, Sophia didn't need a medical explanation. She knew in her heart what was happening. By Oliver's first birthday, he could move his arms. By his second, against all odds, he was sitting up. And by the time he turned 3, he took his first wobbly steps, straight toward Max. The hospital staff called it a medical anomaly. Sophia, she called it a miracle. Epilogue. The power of love. Years later, the sound of laughter echoed through the backyard. Oliver, now a vibrant little boy, ran through the grass, his giggles filling the air as Max chased him, his golden fur gleaming in the sunlight. Sophia watched them, her heart full, her mind flashing back to that stormy night when everything changed. She knew now, more than ever, that love and companionship held a power beyond explanation. It wasn't just medicine that healed Oliver. It was the unwavering love of a faithful dog. Because sometimes, the greatest miracles come in the smallest, furriest packages.